Hello, everyone. I'm Sam Eckmann of Gold Derby here with the wonderful Tony Shalhoub of the final season of The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. So bittersweet to let this one go, but it's been a great journey. And, Abe has a very particular, interactions with his grandkids. He becomes very obsessed with his grandkids this season, which results in some of my favorite comedic bits. Where do you think that comes from for him?
Yeah, I think it's part of Abe's overall character arc over 5 seasons. I remember recently, for a totally different reason, was watching the pilot again. And there's this one moment in the pilot where um, I'm in my study, and Ethan, the very young grandson, is there, and I need him out of there. And I remember I registered this one particular moment where Midge and Rose are talking in the bedroom, in the kids' room, the baby's room, and you see the door open and you see Abe push his grandson without saying anything, just push Ethan into the room and like with giving Midge the stink eye, like, get this kid out of my hair. And then the door closes. And I just thought that was such a great, a great indicator of where he was, when we started this story. And just kind of like that whole mentality of kids should be seen and not heard, and most of the time not even seen, you know. And
Yeah.
so just the fact that they connect Abe to these two grandchildren in a significant way in the 5th season is just, I don't know, it's just a real indication of how they see the evolution of this character and all those relationships.
And I think it's an example, when I think about him trying to discover the genius and putting things in their path to bring out their genius. So much of the comedy of this series comes out of the characters like taking themselves deathly seriously. So
Yeah.
I'm always curious, does it feel serious on set filming those, or is it funny on set?
It is very funny on set. I mean, the work we take very seriously, but we're all kind of in love with each other's characterizations and what the writers give us all to do, all the juicy stuff that they put in front of us. But no, it's delightful, and you're absolutely right. It is an exaggerated kind of, especially with Abe, a sort of an exaggerated sort of self-importance, and where he just seems to believe that he knows everything and that he's figured out everything in terms of his position in life, his stature in the, in society, his role as a father, grandfather, and husband. And really, it's the whole 5 years has been an ongoing discovery of how little he really understands, and in a way, but there's self-discovery within that. So some redeeming quality there.
Well, there's a lot of you have one particular scene which really hit my heart, when Abe is at that table, the dinner table at the restaurant with his coworkers, and has this realization. I think you say Miriam was who she was all along, and perhaps he didn't, properly support, her true self. What were your thoughts when you first read that scene?
Well, I was thrilled that they gave Abe this kind of revelatory moment, this level of understanding, and on another level, I related to it very well because I have two daughters that are around Midge's age, and I'm constantly seeing them in new ways and in new lights, and it's humbling to realize that they understand, they know things, they uh, they move through their lives totally separate from what we thought we were teaching and what we thought we were instilling in them. And you know what I mean? They come into the world with these certain sets of tools and certain levels of resourcefulness that, we like to think as parents that we're doing it all, and we're doing maybe 10% of it if we're lucky.
Yeah. It's a scene where, for a show that is very rapidly paced, all of a sudden everything really slows down. You can even tell when that one character says, he's looking at the piles of his life in his apartment, and Abe really latches on to that, and everything just slows. What did that feel like, you know, filming that kind of moment where there's such focus?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because when we were working on it, we did, a lot of takes because we had to do singles on everybody in various sizes. And Dan was directing that one, Dan Palladino,
Hmm.
and he would come over to me between takes and say, because I was in the Maisel rhythm there for a while, which is just rapid fire all the time. And he said, you can really let this breathe, and don't feel that you have to rush it. And God, it was such a luxury to really to be able to drop down into it, and not feel like, is this scene going to be uh too long or uncuttable in some ways, or and it took me a few takes to really, really embrace that idea that it was, it kind of needed to be moving at the pace of Abe's real in the moment thoughts and and discovery.
Mm. And then it's really wonderful to see you get the moment with Midge at the end in the final episode where you get to tell her, I'm proud of you, and have that moment that really hasn't been there this whole time. I feel like it must feel incredible to be able to play something new in a series that has gone on for this many seasons. Is that,
It's very
correct
true.
there?
That's been true for throughout this, from season 1 to 2 to 3 and all the way through, because I discovered a lot of things about Abe once we went to the Catskills, for example. Once he is in this different environment, wearing different clothes, drinking quite a bit, letting his hair down a little bit. And then even in Paris too, of course, before the Catskills, um, you know, rediscovering or uh, reimagining his relationship with his wife, uh, which went through a huge shift at that time. And then in 3, at the end of 3, letting go of his two precious jobs, Bell Labs and at Columbia, and reinventing himself as a theater critic. And then, I mean, it's been a constant. They've given me so many different new things to play in and explore, and that's rare in a series where most of the time in a long running show you you find your little corner of the world, and you just kind of you just live there. So this was very different.
Yeah. Well, speaking of your on-screen wife, Maren and I were talking about the amazing sequence of the two of you trying and failing spectacularly to hail a cab on the Upper West Side. It's one of those like signature long takes, continuous takes from Mrs. Maisel. Did those ever become easier, thinking to this one versus
Well,
when you started in season one?
you would think that they would become easier, but they kept raising the bar on us. I mean, it wasn't just, it was difficult enough in the early going to move from room to room within the apartment, for example, in a oneer, where you're going from the living room through the hallway into the kitchen, out of the kitchen, down to the bedroom, into the bathroom, all in one without cuts. So that's one level of difficulty. But to be out on the street with literally with like 50 or 60 cars, uh, you know, in on Central Park West, just when you think like, oh, okay, I got this, then the next kind of knuckleball would get thrown, and you had to try to swat away at that. So no, the short answer is no. They never got easier. but they were always challenging, and they always, it was kind of like we felt in a way after we learned how to do this, that they were honoring us because they trusted that we could do it. Forget the level of difficulty. If they believed that we could do it, then we could believe that, or we could, have that level of confidence. And so that helped.
Yeah. You mentioned before the kind of concept of having these big revelations with the character throughout the series. And I think, that's one of the most satisfying things of watching the show is these great transition arcs for everyone. And they all kind of, to quote Abe, they realize who they were all along, in a sense.
Yeah.
What is kind of, now that you're at this place looking back on it, what's the most satisfying part of Abe's journey to play?
I guess for me, the most profound part is that he goes from season one, as a sort of, he's a career professional. I mean, takes his job and his place in the community so very seriously, and the family, not that the family is so secondary, but he assumes that he's done everything right, he's checked all the boxes, everybody's fine, they're married, they're having their families, their husbands, their spouses are fine, everything's stable. And what we discover, what we come to at the end of, in the middle and at the end of season 5, is that his priorities have shifted from his work life to his family life, and his role, again, as a husband, as a father, and as a grandfather.
Yeah. And as this, now that all the episodes have aired, it's finished, what kind of emotions were coming up as this was coming to an end? Has it sunk in yet that it's already ended?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's hard to swallow. The ending, the last episode, the last part, the last sequence of the last episode was very emotional for all of us. We were not ready to let it go. And but having seen season 5 now, I feel they couldn't have ended it in a better way. I mean, they really did serve each one of these characters and their character arcs. And I thought the ending was really, the whole last half of the 5th season was just so gratifying. And so we have to just, kind of relax into that and accept what is, and move forward. And, with the understanding that these 45 or 50 episodes, however many there are going to live on, and I think they're somewhat timeless, and they're going to have this show's going to have long legs.
Yes. Well, and you're familiar with shows having long legs because you're actually revisiting a character you've said goodbye to with Monk with this new film. What was it, because you played that character for a very long time, what was intriguing to you about revisiting him all these years later?
Yeah, well, we had done it for 8 seasons. We had done 125 episodes. And so it's been 14 years almost 14 since we've wrapped that. And the idea of revisiting and rebooting, that idea was kicked around over the last decade or so, a couple of times, but there never frankly seemed like a compelling enough reason to do it. But then the pandemic hit, and that really kind of jarred everyone into thinking, well, then we did that public service announcement for Peacock, yes, where we see Monk, in the thick of it all. And then we started thinking, well, not only would this have impacted this character deeply, but it's changed the world around him too, and maybe given others an appreciation for where they always sort of thought he was neurotic and kooky and a little nutty, that now maybe he's become kind of a visionary and more relatable. So we thought, well, let's just take a drive down that road and And so that's kind of where we start with this episode. But Monk's in a very, very dark place when we revisit him. And I kind of like that. I think, I mean, the comedy is certainly going to be there, but he's in a place we have not seen him before.
I would imagine the pandemic would be extremely difficult for him. So I'm looking forward to see how he deals with it. And it's sort of a interesting place we're living into, where things that that we have said goodbye to can live on. So perhaps even Abe Weissman will live on one day at a
Oh,
public
boy.
service announcement someday.
I hope that and more. Yeah, Abe will forever be a part of me.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for a fantastic ending to this season and series as a whole. And if you're watching out there, subscribe to Gold Derby. Stick with us this season. Tony, thank you so much.
Great talking to you. Bye.